Hey guys, I know that filming documentary interviews can be quite challenging, especially if you're at the beginning of your filmmaking career and you don't really know how to work with a lot of equipment and you don't have a good understanding of how to make the interviews look good. But don't worry, I got you covered. I'm starting a series of cinematography breakdowns in which every month I'll break down few of the interviews that I've shot in my career. I'm gonna start very simple, focusing on natural lighting, and as the series progresses, we will get into more complicating setups so that you will get a much better understanding of how to make interviews look good, whether that means on low budget with no equipment or higher budgets and maybe even working with the crew. So this is the first video of the series and we're gonna dive into some of the interviews that I've shot only using natural light. This is an interview that actually never made it out to public because the project was just very strange and it just never got edited. But looking at this, it's one of my favorite interviews that I've shot during that year. This was shot at the end of 2022, I believe. And this was shot in Kenya, in Iten. As you can see, it's not a traditional interview angle. This is a little low angle. I'm quite close to the character, around I think 24 millimeters actually. And I'm just gonna break this down now. So first step is, let's have a look at the positioning of this interview. So you can see that I'm shooting into the corner of the room. The corner is right here. And that gives us nice lines across the image, and it also creates depth. Despite the character not being very far from the wall, we still have a good amount of depth thanks to the corner of the room. The camera is shooting on the shadow side, so you can see that this is basically the direction camera is looking, and we are shooting on the shadow side of the character. So if there are two things that you can take away from this, first interview, that is the positioning. Always look for depth if you can, especially if you're a beginner cinematographer, and always shoot on the shadow side. That way you can create more visual interest in the image, and it's just a very good rule of thumb that you can follow. Now, so this is the positioning. Let's have a look at the lighting now. So there are two sources in this setup. Obviously you can see the window here, but this window doesn't serve as a key light. The key light is coming from this direction and is hitting the character's face. We can see it here. And the key light source in this case are door. So doors that are open and are letting the light in. Then we have the second source, which is, as I said, the window right here. And this gives us more of an edge. If I zoom in, you can see here how that window is separating the character from the background. You can see it over here, also over here. And it's just creating a little more visual interest. Now, if I remember correctly, this was shot around 4 p.m. in the afternoon, and the sun wasn't shooting directly into the door. So this light that you see on the character's face is more of an ambient light that is just coming from the outside. Other than that, there's no lighting in this frame. This is all natural, all ambient light, and it's all about positioning of the character in relationship to the key source. Now, I have a BTS shot here as well, so you can have a look that the camera really is shooting on the shadow side in this direction, and then you can also see the light coming in through the door, so it's coming in kind of this way. The camera is not in the light so much. This is the main part that is lighting the character, going this way. Now, the reason why, maybe let's talk about this framing. The reason why I chose this framing is because I wanted to feel really close to the character as a viewer. And also this character is former marathon runner. You could see the medals hanging around here on the wall. And I wanted to show those, I wanted to show what is his background and that this room tells a story, his story. So that's why I chose this framing and why I chose to be close to the character. I do also like the kind of monotone color palette. This is all warm tones. And yeah, overall, really happy with this interview. Shame that it didn't get out. One last thing I would say when it comes to the lighting. This light that you see on his face is not diffused by anything. It's an ambient light. I tried to diffuse it by a shower curtain, but it was too thick, so it wasn't letting enough light inside. And when you're shooting people who have darker skin tone, it's actually okay to use a little harsher light than you would usually do, because their skin will take some of that light in, because obviously it's darker. And so having a little bit of the highlights on the skin, I don't mind that at all. I think it adds interest and just makes for a really nice documentary looking interview. No equipment, except obviously the camera, but it's all about the positioning. So if there's a lesson that you take from this first breakdown, then that's definitely the positioning, as I said, finding depth and positioning the character accordingly towards the light source. Now let's have a look at the second interview. So this is very different, as you can see. This interview has also been shot all with natural light, and I shot this in 2023 in Monaco with a classical painter. His name is Toby Wright, and he's just an incredible human being and an artist. Now let's have a look at the master. So you can see the wide shot here, and if we start with positioning, it's very different compared to what we saw in the previous interviews. As you can see, with this wide angle, we are not actually shooting into the corner of the room, but we are shooting kind of flat onto the wall. We are shooting quite wide, and we also have quite a lot of head space. So the reason for this is mainly because of the light source that we are using in this case. And the light source is coming from the right side of the frame, from here. I'll talk about the light source later. I wanted to shoot it this way because I wanted to show the space of the character, even more than in the previous interview from Kenya. So I wanted to show all of these little paintings that Toby has painted. Well, some of them are actually not so little, but this really tells the story of who he is. You immediately understand that he is inside the studio, that he's probably a painter, and that way the frame speaks for itself. We also have this beautiful couch that he had in the studio with incredible shape, and I love the tones of this interview. Everything is in these blue and brown earth tones, and it just fits really well. Now, we also have a side angle, or like a second cam. So this was a B cam, and you can see that in this case we are shooting a bit more into the corner, and we are getting some depth and some leading lines coming from the paintings and from this cabinet here. Now let's have a look at the lighting. So as I said, light coming from the right side of the frame, hitting Toby and splitting him in the right side, and then more of a shadow side here. Now the light source, I don't have a behind the scenes photo, but I'll just draw the room. So the room looks like this. This is Toby. This is the camera here. Sorry for my painting. And here on this side, on the right side of the room, we have a massive window, and this window has diffusion on it because Toby is a painter and he needs to work with a lot of natural light in his studio. So these windows already have diffusion, which is why they're creating such a nice soft light on his skin. That's really it for the lighting. We didn't need to use any negative fill because The other side of the room, basically this side of the room, is only getting darker. And so you can see that we are getting shadow here on Toby. And yeah, that's really all that we're doing here. We're not using any hair light to separate him. I think there's enough separation in this frame. And the only thing that I would improve here would probably be to get a little bit of wrap here and get this Rembrandt triangle. What I would have to do in order to do that is I would have to take a bounce, and I would probably try to bounce some of the light from around here just to make it wrap a little more into this area of his face. I didn't have time to do that, and also, to be honest, I haven't thought about it because it was 2 years ago and I didn't understand the cinematography as well as I do now. But overall, really nice looking interview. As I said, all natural light. And if there's one lesson that you can take from this, that is look for big soft sources of light, like we had in our case, this window, which was on the right side of the room. That will make your job much easier, especially if you combine it with the tip from the previous breakdown, and that is the positioning. Now let's jump into the third interview. So this is an interview that I shot in Nepal. That was about 2 months ago. Probably one of my favorite natural light interviews to date. If we look at positioning here, then we are actually breaking some rules because we are not really shooting into the corner of the room, even though I think the corner would be here, but you can't really see the corner in the room. And we are also not creating so much depth. As you can see, we are quite close to the background. But the reason I shot it this way is because, first of all, I wanted to really show the space of the character. Again, what is the space that he lives in and how does it represent him? So you can see North Face duffel bags here, another duffel bag. This character is a former climber. He climbed Everest 9 times and then he decided to quit, and now he runs lodges in Nepal. But you can see that his climbing past is very much affecting him. You can also see that he's a Buddhist. You can see Dalai Lama's photo here, a little altar with some candles and some golden, how do you call these? Goblets, I guess. And then we can see these barrels, which again are more of a kind of a supplies and climbing gear. At the same time, he's dressed in his beautiful traditional Sherpa outfit, and it just describes the character really well. Now for the lighting, as you can see, beautiful soft light on his face, sculpting his face, showing us just enough that we need to see into his eyes and into his expression, but then also having a very rich shadow on this side of the face. So again, shooting on the shadow side in this case, and the light is coming sort of from this direction, which I'm going to show you in the next screenshot. So if I look at this wide shot, which is part of the film that I'm making, you can see that the character is looking in a different way, and that's because this is a B-roll shot, it's not an interview shot. But you can see that the key light is basically this window on top of the roof here, and it has some sort of diffusion material over it. Again, I think it's just dirty plastic bags. It was already there, and that way it's diffusing the light that is coming in on the character. But as you can see, we also have a lot of white kind of supply bags. I think this is rice and flour. And so what I did for the interview, I actually took this blanket off, and that gave us a nice natural bounce that is bouncing a little more light into the character's face. And that's really it for the lighting. The rest is darkness. You can see that all of this is just dark wood or dark materials. That's what gives us so much contrast and so much deep shadows, as you can see in this shot. Yeah. And as you can see in this shot, we do have that kind of Rembrandt triangle here. So definitely a little more sculpted shot than the previous two. The reason I would say is this was shot this year, 2025. The previous two examples were shot in 2022 and 2023. So as you can see, I've progressed also with my cinematography. Then we have a little candle here, and that's giving us a bit more light here. I actually think I've put a small LED into this area just to bring a little more light onto the golden goblets. But there's no light on the character. So interview lit with natural light. And, you know, again, this interview looks so good because of the location, because we are able to leverage the position of the window, align it with the position of the character, and we were lucky with having these white supply bags here that bounce some light in. So this is interview number 3, and I'm going to show you one more interview. Probably the lesson that you could take from this is don't be afraid of darkness, right? Like, don't be afraid of shadows. These shadows are really dark. You can't almost see inside, but they're not crushed. If I would want to improve this, I would probably try to bring a little more highlight into the character's eyes by either placing a small LED light somewhere around here, or just adding like a 5-in-1 bounce that can bounce a little more light into his eyes. So this was also shot in Nepal. And if we look at positioning, in this case, we are shooting into the corner of the room, here and here. We are keeping distance between the character and the background, so creating depth. And we are once again shooting with the camera on the shadow side here. The shadow here is not so profound as in the previous example, but you can see that we are shooting on the shadow side. Now, when it comes to the light, we have a beautiful highlight. This is exactly something I would love to have achieved with the previous character. And then we just have the light coming sort of, yes, from this direction. So camera right. And yeah, it's lighting his face this way. And the source is a window. I'll show you a drawing of this room quickly. So if we look at this room, let's say that we have a corner. This would be the back wall with the kitchen. Then we have the character sitting here. We have the camera shooting into the corner of the room. So this way, zoom in. And then we have a wall here. We have a wall here. And then we have window and door. So here we have window, here we have door, and the window is really lighting the face. Again, this is not directional light, it's more an ambient light coming out of the window, and I had to bump up the ISO to 5120 on my Kinefinity in order to be able to capture the amount of light that we are seeing in the frame. And then we have some light coming out of the door, and that is actually lighting the space here. So you can see it, it's a little more kind of here, but not hitting the character. So I positioned the camera exactly between the window, between the doors and the window. And that's really it. Nothing else, no other light sources in this frame. The window was also quite small and it was quite dirty. So again, natural diffusion. You know, it wasn't a clean, shiny window, but it was a dirty old window. So that diffused the light. And I really, honestly, I love the light on his skin. It just looks so nice, especially with his skin tone. We also have a great combination of colors. Like you can have a look. We have all this blue here, blue here, blue here, and then we have more of a warm, earthy orange tones, and that is his skin. His t-shirt goes perfectly with the background here, also with the colors here, with the wood. Yeah, just a beautiful orange and teal color palette. Very natural. So So this is the breakdown of the 4 interviews, and the key takeaways are positioning and creating depth, especially if you're beginner cinematographer, learning to work with natural light, so finding key sources or key light sources that are soft and that help you position the character in a way that you can just create nice interviews. Shooting on the shadow side, super important. And then really, I think for documentary interviews, making sure that you show the environment, right? That the environment represents the character, feels like the character belongs in that environment. So that's it for the breakdown. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section below. And expect another breakdown next month where I will probably go over 4 to 5 other interviews that I shot. But this time, these will be interviews where I'm using minimal lighting setup. So not natural light, but actually using one key light and sometimes maybe an edge light. That's it for today, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.